because the next section is running backs, and the top running backs. We'll all take a look at those. But in our pursuit of finding the top running backs, we try and find NFL pro comparisons. And I was looking at some LaDainian Tomlinson highlights. It's always nice to find an excuse. Obviously, looking at a season where Drew Brees is chucking him the ball back, and then he's making, I think it was about 4 forward passes for touchdowns that season. So then, Drew Brees was bouncing around there as well in my thoughts. But let's talk about this upcoming crop of running backs. Connor, I know your opinion on the class was not particularly kind. Is it safe to say you're not a fan of the crop this year?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen stronger classes. And yeah, I think my thoughts having I suppose previewed them a little bit more during the week is that I think you can see why they're not projected to be up in the top order or potentially even the first round. So yeah, it's not as strong as it could be, but yeah, it's interesting going through them anyway. So
yeah, let's see. Let's start. All right, who wants to go first and give us their number one? Henry, why don't you take us away? Who is your number one running back?
Yeah, happy to start it. And I did have similar feelings to Connor, if I'm honest. I don't think it's a strong group. I think by now, if you've listened to any of the pods, you'll know my feelings on running backs and how they shouldn't be near the first 2 rounds in general. I found it really hard to rank them because I think there's some different skill sets in there. If I had to pick a back that I think will probably have the most success at the NFL level, I think it would be Travis Etienne. He would have been my number 1 back last year as well. And I do think he has an intriguing skill set. I wasn't blown away. I think he's got some good burst. He's definitely got some good balance, and actually reminds me of a better version of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who went in the first round last year. Similar that you said, you sort of came across some interesting things, Josh. One thing that I came across in his highlights was the Clemson quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, who I think will be starting next year, probably one of the top picks maybe in a couple of years in the NFL draft. But if anyone watched QB1 on Netflix, the documentary series, he was on that for a bit. So that was cool to see him playing for Clemson and throwing the ball to Etienne as well.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. For me, Etienne was number 2. I like the comp, but for me, I kind of took him as Alvin Kamara was really where I looked, but I didn't see him quite so high. Just a similar side. I think, the thing which Etienne really brings to the table is that top level burst of speed. I think that's the difference between him and the other top backs in this class. But for me, number 1 was Javonte Williams from University of North Carolina. And his pro comparison, and that's why I was talking about LT, was Chris Carson mixed with LaDainian Tomlinson. If LaDainian Tomlinson didn't have the high-end speed, then I would say he's a remake of him. I don't think he'll have that level of success, but, there's just something about him as a runner. I think he's the best pure runner in the class. Chris, what about for you? Who did you have as your number 1 running back?
I sided with Henry after looking through the film. Obviously, Najee Harris has got all the talk, but Etienne was my number 1. He's quick running back, good mobility, and he was able to make a big play look really easy with the pace he's got, and showed some attributes to be a third down pass catcher as well. I think the main difference between him and Najee Harris for me was the athleticism from Etienne was just on another level, whereas Najee Harris a bit more physical, and despite that, he was still athletic, but I think Etienne was a bit more explosive. So my top 3 were Etienne, Najee Harris, then Javonte Williams. I really liked his film, and he seems so physical, but manages to break like every tackle. I was so impressed. He's not elite speed, but he's fast. And I didn't check his yards after contact, but it must be up there. And for somebody as a Steelers fan, it looks unlikely we're going to sign James Conner, and potentially this could be someone who could fit really well. Looks like he's looking being mocked to the end of the second round, so he might be there for us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Connor, what about for you? Who's number 1 in your ranking?
Yeah, I think mine goes back actually a little bit to to whoever has listened to some of our previous pods. I've kind of stated before that I am a little bit more of a fan nowadays of a more powerful running back. And for me, I think the clear standout for that would be Najee Harris. So I think he stood out for me watching the tape for them, and he would be up there as my number one like running back coming out of this draft class. I just think there's space for that in the NFL at the moment. There's a need for that. We're seeing them, well, those sorts of running backs take that sort of control at the moment. And I think, yeah, he from his tape and from his stats coming out of college, I think he's got some great potential to really make an impact on his team.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. I mean, for me, to be completely honest, Najee Harris didn't even crack my top three. I think there's a lot to be said about big back, and you made a really good point, Connor. Power back, they translate to the NFL. You don't have to do too much to change it, and he's got the pass catching, which is a rare combination. I kind of view him as like a Mark Ingram type player. I think he works well in the backfield, but I just don't think he has enough to really separate from the guys, and he looks very sluggish in my opinion. And you play at Alabama, you basically play with an NFL caliber offensive line. You got it pretty easy. Henry, we didn't go through what your top three actually looks like. Was Najee Harris in there?
No, I have interestingly had the same comp as you, Josh, but I didn't think he looked as good as Mark Ingram at any point. Yeah, sluggish, a bit like as you said, would be a word that stood out to me. I think with that power back title, he's definitely not in the same category of power as a Derrick Henry. It's not that level. I just didn't see that at any point. And really, the only highlights that I saw were the hurdle plays, which I don't think are gonna pop at the NFL level of the same extent. It's probably that's gonna hurt. So I was really disappointed when I saw him. I think, like you said, just some receiving ability down the field, which was quite nice, but nothing stood out to me except the Alabama offensive line, which was pretty exceptional. And also how edge defenders at the college level cannot contain or set an edge at all. So many times the edge just crashes down and Harris bounced it out very easily. So yeah, Harris was not at all impressive for me. I've seen him. I don't know if anyone saw Charlie Casserly's mock draft with the Falcons taking him at 8 overall, I think, after trading down. Yeah, less said about that, the better. Someone I would like to mention, though, who did stand out to me was Michael Carter, who Javonte Williams' teammate. Definitely think there's a role for him at the NFL. I think maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick there. But some nice speed, short striding, had some good juke moves, and actually remind me a little bit of Aaron Jones coming out of UTEP. Obviously, the Packers will be looking for an Aaron Jones replacement. Thought he was an intriguing prospect, and I did really like Javonte Williams as well. Packers have already met with him virtually. That prompted me to take a look at him, and yeah, really interesting combination. There's a sort of almost a bull rush against Florida State where he just flattens a guy, which you just don't see from Najee Harris at all. So yeah, I think some similar thoughts there.
So is Michael Carter your number 3 and Javonte Williams your number 2?
So this is a tricky one for me. I didn't really rank them as such because I think it really depends what you're looking for. I think it's really impossible to rank Williams and Carter. I think obviously they work nicely on the same team, but really, if you're for the Packers, if you're looking for that more scat back, 3rd down back receiving ability, definitely a Michael Carter. If you're looking for a 1st and 2nd down back, definitely Williams. They would be my top 3 of backs. But I think it really depends what you're looking for, who you go for.
Yeah, and I had Michael Carter comped as Devonta Freeman, but for me, he was number 8 in my running back rankings. My number 3, who we haven't talked about yet, was Kenneth Gainwell, Memphis. Biggest knock on him from the American Conference. The standard of competition is nowhere near as high, but I just couldn't bring myself to rank him any lower than 3. He brings such versatility to the offense. He could be a wide receiver for all intents and purposes, very much a Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara type player. And I just hope you know, he doesn't get over specified at the NFL coaching perspective. You know, they try too hard to push people into boxes, in my opinion. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching Kenneth Gainwell. Obviously, for me, Najee Harris was number 4. So it was 1, Javonte Williams, 2, Travis Etienne, 3, Kenneth Gainwell, 4, Najee Harris, and 5, and this is probably the prospect who I'm the most excited about, was Chuba Hubbard. I mean, incredible talent. He ran a 10.55 100-meter yard dash when the guy was 16 years old, which I looked it up. And the last Olympics we had, 2016, the preliminary round, so the qualifiers to make it in there, he would have been the 3rd fastest runner at the age of 16 if he hit his personal best. And that guy's on a football field. I mean, like, and he's not 16 anymore, right? I mean, I'm just looking at the guy and I'm thinking, he was a home run machine. He looked like a cheat code on tape. Yeah, you know, he doesn't have the vision or the balance. Things were so easy to just get him out there. But as soon as he hit open field, he was gone. You know, if you are an NFL coach and you want a chance to get your hands on someone with supreme athleticism and coach them up, this is the guy. And I'm so surprised he didn't spend another year in college. Elite production in 2019, 2020, massive drop off. But yeah, Chris, what were your thoughts on Chuba?
So did you have Gainwell at 4, then Hubbard at 5?
No, so I had 1 was Javonte Williams, 2 was Etienne, 3 was Gainwell, 4 was Najee Harris, 5 was Chuba Hubbard. And just before you continue your point, my comparison for Chuba was Calvin Johnson. You know, I don't think you could pick any back in the NFL's history that had the same speed that this guy does, but maybe Chris Johnson's close. I don't know if I said Calvin Johnson, but Chris Johnson, obviously, CJ2K.
Yeah, that's a unique skill set if you got both of those.
If you got both of those, that's DK Metcalf. Yeah.
So I had Hubbard 4th in my running back rankings. I similar thoughts to you, Josh. Absolutely electric. This guy's so fast. He's great footwork, able to make a move, make a man miss. He seems to have a good O-line. I'm not sure on the standards there, but he seems to have a good line that made acres of space. But I don't know if it was he just found the space and made it look massive. You know, all of the film is essentially a 60-yard, 70-yard, 60-yard touchdown breakaway play. He can absolutely take it. He is so exciting to watch. Similar vibes I got from watching Kadarius Toney last week, where I mentioned he's probably one of the most excitable players for me. Chuba Hubbard really was a standout player. And then I had Kenneth Gainwell. Great footwork, great balance. He loves a spin move, this guy. And again, I made a note there, loving could be handy lining up in the slot, you know, as a versatile option there. So I had Hubbard, then Gainwell for me.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. I think that's a really good point. Connor, what about you? How does your top 5-ish rank out?
Yeah, I think the others, like after my number 1 would be Travis Etienne, and then I was probably looking next. I actually think Kenny Gainwell was next on my list as probably my top 3. One other thing that I wanted to highlight, which is quite exciting, I suppose, for obviously we've not mentioned him. I don't know where he'll go, probably a lot later down the line, but there's excitement around one of Last Chance U's very own. If any of you guys have watched Last Chance U, but we've got Rakeem Boyd in for contention in the draft this year, which is just really exciting in itself. It's always great to see those success stories coming out. So just one to highlight specifically. But yeah, no, really interesting there.
Thanks, Connor. Henry, finish us off with your list. Does Rakeem Boyd come anywhere close?
I'm not putting him up in my 5. I'm telling you that. I'm just saying.
No, I definitely remember him from Last Chance U, though, Connor. That's a great shout, and I was aware that he was coming out this year. I haven't got him in my top few, but let's see. I think he does have a chance to get drafted if I'm right. I think he'll probably be a 7th round, but maybe a chance there. Definitely has some talent. I'll mention maybe 1 or 2 more guys that sort of stood out to me. Probably my favorite player out of the class to watch, maybe bar Hubbard, was Demetric Felton of UCLA. I think he's got a really intriguing skill set. Definitely a big role in the NFL for him. My comp was Austin Eckler. I think he's got a lot of receiving ability. He played a lot in the slot and actually competed at the Senior Bowl as a slot receiver, but so many missed tackles on tape. I would definitely one that I would really think would suit the Packers on round 4, round 5 to complement the running backs we've already got. So Dimitri Felton, really, really looking forward to seeing what he can do at the NFL. And then I've got Sermon from Ohio State, was one that I thought was an interesting player because he is such a non-elite athlete. Just didn't look physically dominant in any regard at the college level, I thought, but had really good feet, really good balance and patience, and really reminded me of Lev Bell as a high end, sort of that patience, picking your spot behind the line and then heavy running. But those were two for me that I'd be interested to see how they do in the NFL. Very, very different players. I think to sum up the class, I would say most of the players don't have a special trait, or if they do have a special trait, they've only got one. They've got Hubbard speed or Williams power. There's not really a guy who I think is special. There's no. I don't think there's a Pro Bowler in here. I don't think even if there was a Pro Bowler, you should draft them in the first 2 or 3 rounds, but I don't think there is one. ETN's the closest for me in terms of that.
Yeah, really apt analysis, Henry. I couldn't agree more. It's more of a depth class rather than a peak level. I agree. I don't think there's a Pro Bowler in here. I would say actually probably in my opinion the most likely is Kenneth Gainwell, just because of his versatility. I'm pleased you outlined Dimitri Felton because at UCLA my pro comp was JD McKissick, very much similar player to Eckler. Versatility, and please you mentioned about Senior Bowl where he did obviously train and play as a wide receiver itself. Trey Sermon, I thought of DeMarco Murray when I was looking at him. Obviously, the thing which he did, which the others didn't necessarily do to the same extent, was perform at the highest level, and he pretty much carried Ohio State in a couple of those games to really propel them to have a chance at the championship. So I thought I was pretty impressed with his ability at the moments when it mattered. Another two for me to highlight were Ramondre Stevenson, who actually was my 6th ranked running back. I think he kind of looked like Alex Collins from a pro comp perspective. Some similarities with Kareem Hunt, a very versatile skill set, but you're exactly right. They're either really well-rounded to the point that they're boring, or they've got one unique trait, but just massively counteracted by so many flaws, which is crazy when you think of how polished these running backs usually come out of college. So, any last points or thoughts which you wanted to add, Chris?
When I was watching Ramondre Stevenson's film, I wasn't that impressed. There was nothing. So I'm surprised to have him as 6th. Like you said, he's well rounded, but there was nothing really that leapt off the tape. Good power, good physicality, 3-down back, but not really explosive. It didn't wow me. We've talked about Dimitri Felton. Henry, great shout. Really love that play. Great on kick returns as well. A bit more versatility. Michael Carter, we talked about. Trey Sermon, we talked about. The only other one was Breece Hall. I don't know what your guys' opinions of him are. I wouldn't say he's top 5, top 10, but I enjoyed watching his athleticism. Stays on his feet. He's got really good balance, able to sort of avoid the tackles, and just exciting to see if he could translate to the NFL. But that was the only other one.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I mean, it's the same every year, isn't it? There's always plenty of running backs that could go undrafted, very late rounds, and still have a role in the NFL. And I think if you look at the gap between Breece Hall and Ramondre Stevenson, it's so minimal. They have such good balance and bounce. That's what they're there for. The thing which I liked about Stevenson was he gets low for contact, drives through a lot of it. But in reality, that's all stuff down to coaching. That's what the NFL's there for. That's meant to be the better place to improve that versatility. So I liked his tape. Yeah, he stood out, but it just it's just one of those things you got to see what actually happens on the day, in my opinion. But Henry, any final thoughts from you?
I love that comp for Sermon that you came up with there, Josh. DeMarco Murray. I think that's a really great shout. I'll chuck out one more name, which was Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech. I think he's a really good illustration of someone that you could probably get on day 3, and you're going to get 95% of the same production as you get from one of these top few guys. And that's the nature of the running back position. They are heavily dependent on what is around them, and they're heavily dependent on their offensive line in particular. So I thought he had sort of that, again, a decent blend of speed and power. My comp was James Robinson of the Jags, and he went undrafted, and you see he was arguably the top rookie running back this past year. So Khalil Herbert may be someone you could pick up in the 7th round or undrafted that may have a James Robinson type impact. But as I said before, I don't think any of these players are worthy of a high selection. And by the nature of the running back position, I don't think any should be touched really in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. And yeah, Herbert himself, obviously playing at Virginia Tech, you always have that knock on what their offensive scheme looks like. You know, how does that translate to the NFL, which always bumps you down a couple of rounds. But yeah, there's always some value there, which is exactly why we don't spend high draft picks on running backs, or good teams don't. I mean, you don't have to look far at the list of teams that have spent a high pick on a running back and what their thoughts are. I mean, Connor, you're the Cowboys fan. If you could choose Ezekiel Elliott or Najee Harris right now, based on their contracts, who would you go for?
Tony Pollard.
Tony Pollard, yeah.
That's the correct answer.
That's a fair enough choice, yeah. As long as you're not picking Najee Harris at number 8, like that mock, I could not agree more, Henry. What a ridiculous decision that was.